we, the people of the United States, to form a more perfect union, secure the blessings of liberty, reestablish the meaning of the Constitution. Hello, friends, and welcome to We the People Show. This is your host, Tiger, and it's been over a month since we did a video for this channel. So now that we're back, instead of talking about future elections like 2022 and 2024, well, first of all, we should, but that'll come later as we're waiting on the census to generate so we could do the House prediction for 2022. And for 2024, it's definitely still too early. We're only about months 3 into the Joe Biden presidency. Well, technically months 2, like if you're counting a full month since Joe Biden was president in January for half a month from January 20th. Donald Trump was still in charge until January 20th. So anyway, about the 2020 election and all, we're not talking about no, this isn't an election in which, what are some of the mistakes that the losing side should take into consideration for future elections. No, it's not that at all. This video is more of a alternate history kind of thing. So it's not a prediction per se or anything like that. It's just an alternate history, what it could have went down had, here's the question, had coronavirus not happened, if there was not a pandemic, what would the election outcome would look like? Now, this isn't like playing favorites in a partisan manner, as y'all probably might have interpreted from the We the People Show tweets or Twitter timeline, that is. No, it's not a partisan take. It's definitely completely nonpartisan based on realistic, logical thinking. So, moving forward, for this video scenario, just imagine that the coronavirus pandemic did not happen. What would the election look like? Well, first of all, let's get to the nominees of both parties. Republicans will nominate President Trump, obviously, of course, because of he did have a popular what's it called? How do I describe it? He has a high approval rating. There we go, within his own party. So of course the GOP would, in this alternate history scenario, nominate President Trump, because President Trump, and as we see in the real timeline, got nominated during even when this pandemic is ongoing in the summer or August, I would say, of 2020. After the conclusion of the convention, the RNC and the Democrats, on the other hand, nominated Joe Biden. And think about it, even if a pandemic did not happen, the Democrats are still going to nominate Joe Biden because not much would change. It's not much of a difference in this alternate timeline because in which COVID didn't happen, because the Democrats have been wanting to nominate an establishment guy for a while, or establishment person in general, because in this recent past election, the DNC, that is, was also heavily against Bernie Sanders, a progressive candidate like Bernie Sanders. They did the same thing. The DNC did the same thing in 2016, which they preferred Hillary over Bernie. Now, in the past election and in this alternate timeline, it's the same thing that's going to occur. They would not prefer Bernie, still prefer an establishment Democrat like Hillary and Biden. In these cases, from 2016 to 2020, the shifts in the political atmosphere. not much has changed for the Democrats. So it's going to be overall, it's going to be the same nominees running against each other, President Trump and Joe Biden. So now let's moving on to the states. Well, first of all, let's start as the list I have right now. Let's start with Arizona. It's in this real timeline. It only went for Joe Biden because of Maricopa County, and the very Trumpian people is gonna tell me, "Oh, they stole it from President Trump." Well, yes, I agree, but hear me out. The thief, the perpetrator who stole the election, wasn't Joe Biden. Actually, it was the Trump campaign themselves. So I agree, the election was stolen, but not by Biden, by the Trump campaign themselves. And I'll explain in the end why. So let's go back to on topic about Arizona, about Maricopa County. Recently, the Arizona Senate, the Senate state legislature, that is, not Mark Kelly or Kristen Sinema. The Arizona State Senate, specifically Senate Republicans, called for, I believe, an audit in recent news of about 2 million ballots from the 2020 election. Well, I did a little bit of digging and research into that, and I have to say Biden legitimately won Arizona. Yes, it might shock some of my Trumpian listeners slash viewers, but I hate to say it, y'all. Biden did won Arizona fair and square. So in this alternate timeline, it's gonna go blue. Arizona's Biden's. Because of the 2 million ballots, think about it. How are you gonna prove that all of them were fake or phony? It just doesn't click. Because as a projection here, I'm now starting to say that the 9,000 votes for Donald Trump and the 1 million votes for Joseph R. Biden were real, and it would be real. Well, the numbers won't be exact in this alternate election when COVID didn't happen, but Maricopa County, I have to say, it's gonna go blue no matter which timeline, the real timeline when there is a pandemic or the alternate timeline here, which there was no COVID pandemic, in which the election was conducted like 2016. And the difference is that with the pandemic, mail-in voting or just ballots in general, absentee ballots has skyrocketed because people want to stay home to vote or vote absentely. But still, it just doesn't make any sense. With the pandemic, if you can protest all summer, you can definitely vote in person. You can protest, and yeah, no matter what kind of protest, the left's protest or the reopened protest back in the April 2020, the spring 2020. And it's just a shift anyway. Sure, there are shift red areas in favor of Trump, but think about it, there are shift blue areas in favor of Biden. So, which proves once and for all why in this alternate timeline, Arizona still goes blue. Sorry, my Trumpian viewers, it is what it is. Now moving on to the next state, Georgia. Now, Georgia, the only reason, a real timeline why it went blue was because of the urban areas. And if you see the barely red shift for President Trump was because of the suburban voters who were turned off by Trump's rhetoric. So there's highly likely these voters voted for Republicans on the other ballots, but voted for Joe Biden on the presidential ticket. So that's why Biden won in the real timeline, Georgia. Now, in this alternate timeline, however, I believe had President Trump changed his tone and reached out to those voters, the suburban voters, without this pandemic, he would have corrected himself and he would have actually won these suburban voters. But no, he didn't change. In the real timeline, he didn't change his toxic rhetoric. Therefore, he drove those voters away, the suburban voters away towards Joe Biden. So in this alternate timeline, had President Trump change his tone simply, he could have won Georgia. And also with Georgia, he could have won Michigan as well. Because y'all see in Michigan, it's the same thing. Those suburban voters turned off by President Trump's rhetoric. And in Michigan, mainly because the urban cities gave the state to Joe Biden in the real timeline. Therefore, this alternate timeline had with no COVID, President Trump could have reached out to those suburban voters and won them, but no, in real timeline he didn't. He got arrogant, I guess, and therefore it cost his arrogance cost him the election. Re-election failed. So those are Georgia and Michigan for y'all. Now, moving up north to Pennsylvania. Well, first of all, in the alternate timeline, I believe Pennsylvania would have gone to Trump. In the real timeline, went for Biden because Biden actually campaigned in an area which makes sense. Y'all see, I used to think that he's just wasting his time in one state, one swing state, that is Pennsylvania. But now I realize he spent his campaign funds on areas that actually mattered. That's why he was able to win Pennsylvania. And no, I'm not going to say that these barely red counties, as I'm pointing out here, are as a result of suburban voters favoring Biden over Trump. It could be possible, but more specifically, Biden himself actually campaigned in places that mattered to win Pennsylvania. And these areas proved it. Not just Philadelphia, but these counties out here. Lackawanna specifically, because that's where his hometown Scranton is at. So in this alternate timeline, had Trump out campaigned more than Biden in Pennsylvania, he would have won Pennsylvania. But in the real timeline, he didn't, and so Biden got Pennsylvania. So that's why in the alternate timeline, had Trump done just that, what I suggested, campaign in this swing state more, he would have won it. But no, his arrogance, as I mentioned before, cost him his re-election potential. Now moving on to Wisconsin. Honestly, I am still gonna give Wisconsin to current President Biden because in this alternate timeline, that is, because honestly, it's expected to go to Joe Biden. Because think about it, in 2016, Trump barely won that state. He won it by, as I checked, yes, 0.77%. That's very narrow victory. And Trump in 2016 winning Wisconsin. But as y'all can see here, sure, some of the rural areas are Trump country, but vast majority of other parts of the state are in favor of Biden. Sure, you can argue that, oh, there are suburban voters who are turned off again by Trump's rhetoric. That might be true, but mostly it's because the state has been, in the past election cycles, been in favor of Democrats. So it's expected to go to Biden's real timelines and alternate timelines. Now, some of y'all might thinking it might contradict my position in, oh, I was suspicious or I was shocked that Wisconsin went for Biden. That was because my pro-Trump tendency at the time thought we campaigned well enough there to win the state, but now looking back, I was wrong. We were wrong. Anyway, now the final state, Nevada. It doesn't matter in this alternate timeline, this video, who would win, because As y'all can see, 284 votes. Trump in this alternate election without COVID, without a pandemic going on, won re-election. So, but as for Nevada itself, it's going for Biden. Excuse me, as this computer lags. It's going for Biden because Washoe County has no indicator of turning red anytime soon. It's heavily in favor of Biden, where Reno, Nevada is at. Washoe County has been a Democrat county. See, Biden won by 4 percentage points, so not much of a surprise there. Hillary won that county too and won the state, even though most states are Republican. It is mainly cities that determine some certain states, that is, which is odd, but it is what it is. It's destiny, Nevada destiny to go blue anyways, in a real timeline or in the alternate timeline. And there's just been talk that's saying that, oh, Nevada is going to turn red because some socialists took over the Nevada Democrat Party, so paving the way for a red Nevada. Well, that's I really do think that is true in a long term, not in a short term. In next presidential election, 2024, I guarantee that Nevada is still gonna go blue. Just by how much, it's a question to possibly shift the momentum to the Republican Party in Nevada and the Republican Party nationally as a whole. That will be determined in the next cycle, depending on how the Nevada Democrat Party is going to perform in a future election. So overall, folks, in this alternate history election in which there was no pandemic, therefore no mail-in voting, mail-related voting, increased numbers, that is, this is the outcome of the alternate history. Trump would have been reelected. Folks, I have to say, this is going to be a close election, pandemic or not, or forget pandemic, just a close election, increased mail-related voting or not, because Biden won in the real timeline just the same amount that Trump won in 2016, because in 2016, Trump won 306 votes to Hillary's 220 to 30 something. So now, fast forward 4 years later, it's the other way around. The Democrats won 306 instead of Trump. And yeah, it's the other way around. So there we have it, folks. That's the real timeline. Now in the real timeline, it was in a way close, but not much of a close election. But in this alternate timeline, it is still close by about, I would say, 30-ish, yes, 30 votes, just 30 electoral votes. So in this alternate timeline, it is close. In a real timeline, it is close. So it's close either way. Increased mail-in related voting or not. It's just that that's our projection in the alternate history interesting video. Now this has no effect in our show stance, folks, about stance on the what's it called, 2022 midterms or the 2024 presidential election. It's just I've been inspired to make this video after seeing how Red Eagle Politics did this. So therefore, hey, I made it happen. There it is. So anyway, regarding I would like to address the claims of a stolen election that I mentioned earlier. I believe it was stolen, not by Biden, by the Trump campaign themselves. As I explained, in certain states, the Trump campaign's performance, they were too arrogant. And in states like Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, 3 important states that Trump could have won. But no, he He lost because his arrogance blinded him from seeing the truth. So that's why these 3 states went blue, because the Trump campaigns stole the election from President Trump. Joe Biden was not a thief here. Now, yes, this show we did use hashtags like, oh, Biden cheated, or Biden was not elected, blah, 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 stuff like that. Honestly, that was just an inquiry. He could have cheated, but in the end, after analysis, he did not. It's the Trump campaign who stole the election from Trump, creating this loophole that allowed Joe Biden to win. So now we have a President Biden. So anyway, folks, that's all in the past. The Republican Party, excuse me, I wish them the best of luck nominating a conservative, a populist, not necessarily Donald Trump himself. He could pull a Grover Cleveland move, but in my personal opinion, that's not going to work for the party. It's a guaranteed second loss for the Republicans in 2024 if we nominate Trump. Yes, former President Trump did give an interesting CPAC or speech at CPAC, but all that did, I believe, was to motivate the populist base, not necessarily hinting that, well, he did say at one point in the speech hinted at a possible next 2024 run, but hey, we'll just have to wait till then to see. And I personally think it's bad news for our party. I personally think that the Republicans should nominate someone like Ron DeSantis or Christine Naom, those people, someone who would have Trump's ideas. Trump himself, his damaging rhetoric isn't going to hand the GOP a W in the next election. And as for the Democrats, who knows if President Biden wants to run for re-election? We just have to see. And the Democrat nominee, my guess or our guess would likely be Vice President Harris. So, well, again, it's too early to say about 2024. So anyway, folks, this is gonna be the alternate history video if increased mail-in voting did not happen. Since it did happen, Biden won, but if it didn't happen, we project that President Trump would have won. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you share this video, definitely our channel too, and we will hope to talk about the House predictions as soon as we have the data. So again, thanks for watching and take care.